All right, Rabosai, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking our sponsors. To thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Adar Beis. To thank Leah Sol for dedicating all of the shiurim and drushos this month in honor of those who organized the beautiful and meaningful groundbreaking, and as well as those who work so hard on behalf of the shul each and every day. Beautiful sponsorship and dedication. We thank Leah. So with that, let us begin. So we have a very exciting daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Chaf Vav 26, and we are picking up in Yirtzeh Hashem on Chaf Hey Amud Beis 25b, and we are picking up Kadeh Yayin v'Kadeh Shemen. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 lines up from the bottom. So remember again, the Mishnah, up until now we've been speaking about one of the chumras, or a couple of the chumras, that Truma has over Kodesh, right? We began the parak by speaking about the stringencies that Kodesh has over Truma, and now we've transitioned to speaking about the chumras that Truma has over Kodesh. So in the last part of the Mishnah is focusing on Kadeh Yayin v'Kadeh Shemen, literally the jugs, the utensils that go ahead and hold wine and oil, hamidumaos. Now remember again, dimua, we actually just had this in Shabbos' Mishnah Yomi as well. Dimua usually refers to a mixture of truma and chulin, or as Rashi points out over here, tevel, truma, and chulin, right? Untithed, truma, chulin, all mixed together. So the Mishnah says over here that halacha l'maisa, when it comes to the jugs, ultimately, once again, ne'emanin alein b'shas hagitos v'habadin. So amei aretz are believed regarding the ritual purity of the jugs at the time of the wine pressing and olive pressing seasons, but not only that, also 70 days prior to the olive or the wine pressing season as well. Okay, Chevron Zoom, you hear me all right? So, Chevron Zoom, you hear me all right? Oh, it's iffy. Okay. I don't know, maybe it's an internet issue, I'm not sure. It's slow, it could be an internet issue. Okay, you know what? Can I give this to you guys? Yeah. And you take break. Yeah. Okay, so therefore again with that, the Gemara says as follows. So Tana, so we'll say, we learned that ultimately again, Amei Aretz are not believed neither on the kankanim, on the jugs, nor on truma. So we'll say, so says the Gemara, kankanim demai. So what are we talking about? What type of jugs are we referring to? I kankanim de kodesh, if you're talking about the jugs of kodesh, so migo de mehemen akodesh, mehemen nami akankanim. So at the end of the day, if we are believed regarding kodesh, so then we should be believed regarding the jugs as well. In other words, I will say, if at the end of the day, the Ama'aretz is believed regarding the contents of the jug, then he certainly should be believed regarding the actual utensil itself. Rather, we must be talking, and again, we've already established that Amei Aretz are believed when it comes to Kodesh. Ela kankanim de truma. Rather, it must be referring ultimately to the jugs of truma, to which the Gemara says, Pshita, hashta truma lo mehemen, akankanim mehemen. Well, here's the problem. How could that be? Because at the end of the day, if we just established that an Amei Aretz is not normally believed regarding the actual contents, the truma itself, then how could he be believed regarding the jugs? Ella, so again, what the Gemara is asking over here is, I don't understand, the jug really shouldn't be any different than the contents. So if you're telling me that Amei Aretz is believed regarding Kodesh, then he should be believed regarding the jugs of Kodesh also. And if he's not believed regarding Truma, then he's not going to be believed regarding the jug of Truma as well. So we'll say this is fascinating. Ella, Bereikanim de Kodesh ubishayimos hashana, ubimalayin de Truma ubishas hagitos. Rather, says the Gemara, what are we referring to over here? Listen to this. We're referring to the empty utensils that were used for Kodesh throughout the year, and with jugs that are filled with Truma at the time of the pressing season. Now look at Rashi for just a moment. So Rashi says, Bereikanim de Kodesh, la'achar sh'ira mehen Kodesh, v'haya shomran lekodesh eno ne'eman al shmirasan. Sebo said this is actually quite fascinating. Technically speaking, if you have jugs that were used for Kodesh, but now the Kodesh was emptied out. Once the Kodesh was emptied out, then halacha l'maisa, once the Kodesh is emptied out, then halacha l'maisa, one no longer has credibility regarding that particular jug. In other words, the credibility regarding the jug for Kodesh is only when the Kodesh is inside of the jug. But once the Kodesh has been emptied out, there's no longer any level of kashrus upon the jug itself. That's for Kodesh. Ubishari kol yimos hashana. Rashi says, Kilomar kol yimos hashana, the Kodesh in chilik bein shas hagitos l'shari yimos hashana. So when it comes to jugs of Kodesh, an Am Haaretz is only believed regarding the jug when the Kodesh is inside of the jug. But once the contents are emptied out, so the Am Haaretz loses his credibility vis-a-vis that jug. What about by Truma? Or b'maleyin the Truma b'shas hagitos. Sha'af al pi shlo gazru al Trumas b'shas hagitos. Mipnei hefsed kohanim chaverim. The nimtzeis mafsidin meirov Trumos Eretz Yisrael. Ala kankanim lo hamina. We'll say this is absolutely fascinating. Let's take a step back for just a moment. Why is it that Am Haaretz is believed regarding Truma during the pressing season? Right? We never spoke about this. Right? We know rules. What's the rule? The rule is that an Am Haaretz has credibility regarding Kodesh throughout the year and has credibility regarding Truma only during the pressing season. Why? But say here Rashi explains it, and it's absolutely fascinating. Look at that Rashi once more. Obimalein the Trum b'shas hagitos, she'af al pi shelo gazru al trumasan b'shas hagitos. Chazal did not impose truma upon the truma of an Am Haaretz during the pressing season. Right? Why? Mipnei hefsid kohanim chaverim. I will say it's very simple. It's because if you go ahead and you say that the truma of an Am Haaretz is tamei during the pressing season, who loses? The kohanim. And I will say, by the way, are most people Am Haaretz? This is a dangerous question to answer, right? Yeah, kind of, right? Kind of. In other words, remember, Am Haaretz is not a pejorative term. Am Haaretz is just reflective of that most people are not versed in the halachos of Tum and Tara. So if you start saying that the truma of an Am Haaretz is tamei at the time of the pressing season, the real losers, right? The real people who lose out on that are the kohanim. Right, because the Kohanim are going to miss out on a huge portion of Truma. The name says, Mafsidin Meirov Trumos Eretz Yisrael. But say, look at the wording of Rashi. See, Rashi says it. Rashi says, the majority of people are Am Haaretz for this particular situation. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, if you go ahead and you make the Trumos of an Am Haaretz tamei, the Kohanim are going to lose in a dramatic fashion. So we'll say, isn't this absolutely incredible? Right? So really now we understand it. Really, the Truma of an Am Haaretz, if I'm a Kohen, I shouldn't touch it, because Am Haaretz are not versed in the laws of Tum and Tara, and therefore Allah have to assume it's Tamei. Chazal said, but during the pressing season. We'll say, by the way, does it even make sense? So during the pressing season, suddenly again, Am Haaretz become Tamdi Chachamim? Right, during the pressing season, they know what to do. Well, if they know what to do during the pressing season, then they should know what to do during the rest of the year. If we would leave them during the pressing season, we should leave them during the rest of the year. And the answer is supposed to you see this a lot in this halacha of Demai, right? You see how when Chazal go ahead, we actually just had this in Mishnah Yoma also. You see that when it comes to dealing with Am Haaretz, Chazal essentially relax or suspend their halachos concerning an Am Haaretz when it either causes undue hardship or undue loss. So in this case over here, it's undue loss. If you say that a Kohen cannot eat from the truma of an Am Haaretz even during the pressing season, they're going to lose an incredible amount. So Rabbi say, now finish the Rashi. However, this dispensation was only on the truma of the Am Haaretz. What is it not on? Ala kankanim lo ha'eminun. Sebo said, this is fascinating. This is just fascinating. The license to go ahead and halacha l'maisa to go ahead and the license to go ahead and she's good because the video is not on Zoom. Okay, thank you. The license to go ahead and and enjoy the truma of an Ama Aretz is only on the truma. It does not apply to the jugs. It does not apply to the jugs. The jugs themselves, the Kohen can't use. Look what Rashi says. So listen to this. If you're a Kohen and you're being mekabel truma from an Ama Aretz, listen to this. You can accept the truma. What can't you accept from the Ama Aretz? His jugs, right? His utensils. Listen to this. Aval meirin osa lekelehen. So I'll say essentially what it means is when you're the Kohen and you're getting truma from an Ama Aretz, you ask the Ama Aretz to transfer the contents into your jug, right? Into the Kohen's jug, into the Kohen's utensils. You can't take the utensils of the Ama Aretz. He said, "Aval meirin osa lekelehen udikavasa l'armin lekamon al tatam shaylag." Supposed to say therefore again. So halacha l'maisa. The Gemara suggests as follows: that essentially, the ritual purity of the truma of an Ama Aretz during the pressing season is only on the truma itself, but does not devolve upon the utensils of the Ama Aretz. Pretty incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Tanan, kadi yayin v'kadi shaman midumos. So what the Mishnah spoke about jugs of wine and jugs of oil that are midumos. So my love midumos the truma that I will say, as we mentioned before, we saw in Mishnah, dimua usually refers to a mixture of truma, chulin, tevel. It does not usually refer to kodesh. Yet again, the subject of the Mishnah is kodesh. So Amri Dvei Rabbi Chia midumos the kodesh. He says no. In this case, the dimua refers to dimua of kodesh. Umi ika dimua lekodesh. But again, that term dimua doesn't usually apply to kodesh. Amri Dvei Rabbi Eloi b'mitar estivlo litol mimenu nisachim. Ultimately, again, what's the case over here? The case over here is where a person is being mitaher his tevel. He's going ahead and purifying his tevel in order ultimately to separate out libations from his tevel. That's why it uses the lashon ultimately of dimua. Beautiful. Kodem legitos shivim yom. So remember again, the Mishnah said not only that, but jugs, right? The utensils have a presumed ritual purity even 70 days prior to the pressing season. Rabbi says, Shemamina, we learn from this. Dinohu di'iluya arisa lemitrach agolfi shivin yomin mikamei ma'atzarta. So Rabbi says, you just learned from here a separate halacha, which is that the sharecropper has an obligation to go ahead and secure proper utensils to contain, right, from the pressing, from the wine pressing, from the olive pressing, 70 days before the pressing. Good. Just learning an interesting halacha vis-a-vis the responsibilities ultimately, again, of the sharecropper. Beautiful. So we'll say we now come to the Mishnah. So now a continuation of the halacha. So we'll say really fascinating sugya. Says the Mishnah, Min ha-modiim v'lifnim ne'emanin al kli cheres. So we'll say from Modiim and into Yerushalayim. Right? So again, remember, so Rashi points out over here, Min ha-modiim v'lifnim, Modiim shem krach, rachok m'Yerushalayim tes vav mil. So Modiim is the name of a city that's within 15 mil of Yerushalayim. Ki da'amar b'meseches, Pesachim, Mimenu v'lifnim l'tzay Yerushalayim ne'emanin. So we'll say, I'm sorry, let's finish the Mishnah. So in Modiim v'lifnim ne'emanin al kli cheres. So we'll say now we're switching gears a little bit. What are we talking about over here? Kli cheres. Just leave it over there. Yeah. So we'll say, so now we're talking about the ritual purity regarding a kli cheres. Right? So min ha-modiim v'lifnim. So from Modi'im on, ultimately we are believed regarding, or I should say, Amei Aretz are believed regarding the ritual purity of earthenware utensils. Now we'll say, let's get a little bit of a background over here. Take a look at Rashi. So Rashi says, Min ha-modi'im v'lifnim. Rashi says, Modi'im shem krach rachok m'Yerushalayim tes vav mil. So once again, so Modi'im is a city that is 15 mil away from Yerushalayim. Kidar Meseches Pesachim Mimenu v'lifnim l'tzad Yerushalayim ne'emanin kadorin amei haaretz likach mehen kli cheres hadakim. So we'll say, so now listen to this. From Modi'in and in. Now, in means towards Yerushalayim. So from Modi'in to Yerushalayim, so Am haaretz potters. Yes, that's the right word, right? Somebody makes earthenware utensils. Right? So am haaretz potters are believed ultimately, again, regarding the ritual purity of small earthenware vessels. Kigon, kederos, kosos, vikitonios. So we're not talking about large storage utensils, but rather small everyday usage utensils. So cups, plates, she'i efshar belohem. These are the kind of things that people just need for everyday use. Obirushalayim ein ofsin kivshonos mipnei ashan lo lesid v'lo lekderos. Lefichach ha'aminum shelo ligzar aleim she'in goes in gzir tzibor she'in rovetzu yachlamot. Okay, so watch. There's a lot happening over here. Now remember, we're going to see on the next daf that halacha l'maisa, you can't make earthenware utensils in Yerushalayim. It's fascinating. Why can't you make earthenware utensils in Yerushalayim? Because earthenware utensils require a kiln. A kiln generates smoke. We don't want any smoke-producing activities in Yerushalayim because it blackens the walls of the city. And we want the beauty of Yerushalayim to be maintained, and therefore no kilns in Yerushalayim. Now I will say, what that means, if there are no kilns in Yerushalayim, so earthenware utensils are staples of everyday use. So here's the issue. Normally we would say, in a vacuum, can you purchase earthenware utensils from an Am Haaretz in a vacuum? Can you purchase it? No, because again, Am Haaretz are not careful with the laws of Tum and Tara. Earthenware utensils are even more complicated, right? Because at the end of the day, once they become tameh, they can't become tahar, right? There's no way to purify them. But listen to this. Nevertheless, the Mishnah says, Ein goes in gzera ala tzibor, she'en tzibur yachal. Chazal cannot create a gzera that creates undue hardship upon the general populace. So, on one hand, we can't make earthenware utensils in Yerushalayim. If you tell people that they can't go ahead and purchase earthenware utensils from Amei Haaretz, it's impossible. It's an impossible situation. So what did Chazal say? They said, you know what? You could purchase earthenware utensils, everyday earthenware, from an Am Haaretz, from Modi'in inwards towards Yerushalayim. Because the hope is that merchants close to Yerushalayim will have a little bit more of a sensitivity to the halachos of ritual purity and impurity, and therefore halacha l'maisa you could go ahead and purchase from them. So back to the Mishnah. That's the introduction. We'll say from modi'in and in. So ultimately, again, so you are permitted to go ahead and purchase earthenware utensils from an Am Haaretz. Min modi'in v'lachutz. But from out Modi'in and out, so we'll say that means from Modi'in and further away from Yerushalayim, we'll see what the status of Modi'in itself is. Ein ne'emanin, you are not believed, or in other words, you are not permitted to go ahead and purchase earthenware utensils from an Am Haaretz. Keitzad, so what's the example? Hakedar, shehu mocher hakederos, nichnas lifnim min hamodi'im, hu hakedar, vehein hakederos, vehein halochin ne'eman. So I will say, this is actually interesting. So therefore, how does this play out? So the Mishnah says, if the potter is the one who is selling the utensils, comes in from Modi'im towards Yerushalayim, he's the potter selling his wares directly to the purchasers, ne'eman. Ultimately, he's permitted. Yatsa, eino ne'eman. So we'll say, here's what's interesting. You could have the same guy with the same utensils. If he's outside of Modi'im, further away from Yerushalayim, can you buy from him? No. Same guy, same utensils, sets up shop inside of Modi'im, close to Yerushalayim, can you buy from him? Yes. But again, the Mishnah just gives certain criteria. This is provided that ultimately, again, it is the potter himself who is the seller, who ultimately is selling only his wares and directly to the purchaser. Incredible. So says the Gemara Tana, Modi'im. What about Modi'im itself? So here's what's interesting. What's the status of the city of Modi'im itself? In other words, we've been talking about inside of Modi'im, outside of Modi'im. That I understand. What about a seller in Modi'im itself? Can you purchase in the city? Says the Gemara, listen to this. Tana, Modi'im, pamim kilifnim, pamim kilachutz. Sometimes Modi'im is like inside, in other words, closer to Yerushalayim, and sometimes is like outside of Yerushalayim. Ketzad, what's an example of this? Listen to this. Kedar Yotze v'chaver nichnas kilifnim. This is fascinating. So let's imagine the following situation. The potter is that we'll call this, for our purpose, we'll call this interior area, exterior area. Interior area for our purposes represents between Modi'im and Yerushalayim. Exterior represents outside of Modi'im, away from Yerushalayim. So we'll say, watch this case. This is great. So listen to this. Kedar Yotze, imagine you have the Kedar leaving the interior area, the Chaver Nichnas. But the Chaver is coming in from the exterior area. And where do they meet? Ultimately, again, Kilifnim. They meet in Modi'im. In that case, Modi'im is considered like an interior area. Right? Now, why is that? Now, this is quite fascinating. Why is that? Because if you don't treat it like an interior area, what's going to happen? The Chaver is going to lose the opportunity to purchase the earthenware utensils. Because presumably, where is the Kedar, where is the potter going? He's going towards the exterior area. So right now, again, the Chaver is going, the Kedar, the potter is going out, the Chaver is coming in, they meet in Modi'im. We want to give the Chaver the opportunity to purchase the earthenware utensils. Therefore, Modi'im itself will be treated like the interior area. However, Shneihen Nichnasim. What if they're both coming into Modi'im? Oh, Shneihen Yotzim. Or they're both going out, right? In other words, Shneihen Nichnasim means they're both coming in from the exterior area, or they're both going out from the interior area, Kilachutz. Modi'im is considered to be like the exterior area. Why is that? Because listen to this. If they're both going in, then Rashi says, just let the Chaver wait until they're out of the city, closer to Yerushalayim. And if they're going out, then why didn't the Chaver purchase the utensils already earlier when they were both in the interior area? In that case, Modi'in will be treated like an exterior area. Incredible. Top of Chavav. Af anan nami tanina. We also learn this. Hakedar shemachar es hakderos. Ultimately, again, if the potter sold the pots, v'nichnas lifnim, and he goes inside, he goes into the interior, v'nichnas lifnim min Modi'im, and he's going ahead and enters in the interior area between Modi'im and Yerushalayim. Taima dilifnim min Modi'im. The reason you're permitted to purchase from him is why? Because he's in the interior area between Modi'im and Yerushalayim. Ha Modi'im gufa lo mehemin. But it would appear from this, based on the Reisha, that Modi'in itself, ultimately again, you're not believed. Ema Seifa, yet look at the end of the Mishnah. Yatza, ultimately again, if halacha lamaisa, you left. Eino ne'eman. Ultimately again, if you left Modi'in, he's not believed. Ha Modi'im gufa ne'eman. So it sounds like again, in Modi'in itself, ultimately again, he is ne'eman. So we'll say, which one is it? Right? Is ultimately, is the potter believed in Modi'im or not? The Gemara says, Elaf shmamina kan bekedar yotze v'chaver nichnas kan b'sheshnein yotzin o shneihen nichnasin shmamina. So therefore, we'll say, it comes out over here as follows. That halacha l'maisa, there are essentially two, we'll call it's really two cases. Case number one is where the potter is going out and the chaver is coming in, right? And where do they meet? They meet in Modi'in. What's the halacha? In that case, Modi'in is considered to be like the interior area. Because again, if we don't give the chaver the opportunity to purchase the earthenware utensils, then he's not going to have access to them again. But in the second case is really comprised of two cases, where halacha l'maisa said they're both walking in together. So from the exterior to the interior together. So ultimately, again, in that case, we'll treat Modi'im like what? Like exterior. Why? Because we'll just tell the chaver, listen, you're both walking in anyway. Just wait until you get further into the interior area and purchase the utensils there. Similarly, when they're both walking out from the interior to the exterior, and now they're in Modi'im, we'll treat Modi'im like the inside, because there we tell the chaver, why didn't you purchase the utensils when you were in the interior area? Beautiful. So essentially, sometimes Modi'in is treated like the interior, sometimes Modi'in is treated like the exterior. It simply depends on the orientation of the chaver and the kedar being the potter. Beautiful. Tana, ne'emanin b'kli cheres hadakin l'kodesh. So let's listen to this. So we learned that ultimately, again, this is our Mishnah, that the Amaretz is believed regarding klei cheres, earthenware utensils, to small earthenware utensils, to be used for Kodesh purposes. Take a look at Rashi Abosai, second wide line on the top of Rashi. Tana ne'eman al klei cheres hadakin l'kodesh. So Rashi says as follows: V'hodisnan min amodiim v'lifnim ne'emanin al klei cheres b'klei cheres hadakin amru. But say, remember again, we're not talking about all earthenware utensils. We're talking about, as Rashi already said this in the Mishnah, we're talking about small earthenware utensils. Amru she'i efshar belohem. I will say, these are the type of utensils that are necessary for day-to-day life. So remember again, this was the cups, the plates, right? The small utensils necessary for day-to-day life. Kidim fishnal avalgasin kigon. I'm reading Rashi. Avalgasin kigon chavis liyayin ein ne'emanin ella besoch Yerushalayim kidla kamon. But I will say that ultimately again, large utensils like barrels for wine, they're only believed inside of Yerushalayim itself. That's Rashi. So we'll say, so therefore I'll go back to the Gemara. So ne'emanim b'kli cheres hadakin l'kodesh. So when we're talking about that Amaretz is believed regarding earthenware utensils, it's only for small utensils to be used with Kodesh. Amar Reish Lakish says, by the way, what does it mean small utensils? V'hu shenitlan biyado achas. Talking about the type of utensil that could be handled with one hand. So Rabbi Yochanan Amar afilu shalom nitlan biyado achas. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it could even be something that's a little bit larger, that maybe it requires two hands, but the point is, it's day-to-day usage utensils as opposed to storage utensils. Amar Reish Lakish, lo shanu ela b'reikanin ava maleyin lo. Furthermore, Reish Lakish says, we're only talking about utensils that are empty, but anything that's full, they don't have credibility for. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, afilu malayim va'afilu afikorsuso l'socho. Rabbi Yochanan says, even if the utensils are full, and even if afikorsuso, so Rashi says over here, afikorsuso is afilu malayin mashkin shalo she'enin shal kodesh. Even if the utensil, right, is filled ultimately again, with the mashkin, with the liquids of the Amaretz, ultimately again he's still believed. Incredible. Rava says, Omod Rabbi Yochanan says, and Rabbi Yochanan agrees, B'mashke atzman shehin temeyin. Rabbi say this is actually fascinating. Rabbi Yochanan says, but halacha l'maisa, even Rabbi Yochanan agrees that halacha l'maisa, the mashke itself is tamei. Right? In other words, the mashkin of the Amaretz is tamei, even though the utensil is going to be tar. V'altatama, and don't be crazed by this. Don't wonder about this. And I will say, how can you have a situation where halacha l'maisa, the utensil is tar, but the contents are tamein? Shahari login mali mashkin, because I will say, if you have login is a wooden utensil, kliates, right? If you have a wooden utensil that's filled ultimately with liquid, login tamein, tumas shiva umashkin tahorin. Ultimately, again, you could have a situation where halacha l'maisa, the utensil itself could become tamei, a tumah for 7 days, and ultimately, again, the mashkin could be tar. So I will say, Rashi points out over here that halacha l'maisa, this could be a situation where you have tumah on the first floor of a house, a klicheres, right, with an opening to the second floor, a klicheres blocking it. We're not going to get into the intricacies over here, but the point the Gemara is making is, you could have a situation where the kli has one state, and ultimately, again, the contents of the kli have a different status in halacha. Good. So bottom line, what we take away from this particular Mishnah is, remember, this is not really focused as much on the chumrus of truma or kodesh, but really focused on another very important halacha, which is the status of earthenware utensils. And therefore, again, the sugya teaching us that halacha l'maisa, even though normally we would say that one should not purchase earthenware utensils from an Amaretz, because again, if somebody's not careful with the laws of ritual purity and impurity, we would have to assume that their earthenware utensils are problematic as well. Halacha l'maisa, Chazal relaxed this standard for utensils sold from between Modi'in and Yerushalayim, allowing us to purchase utensils from Amei Haaretz. And again, This is also driven by the fact that you can't produce earthenware utensils in Yerushalayim itself. Be it earthenware utensils are a staple of day-to-day living. Chazal relaxed the standards. What's the status of Modi'im itself? That depends on the circumstances of the people involved. But halacha l'maisa, again, there's a license to be able to do this. The Gemara telling us it's not all kelim, day-to-day kelim, not usage kelim. Good. We'll say, so that's the takeaway from the sugya. Let's go back to the Mishnah. Hagaboin. We'll say really all these just fascinating cases. Hagaboin shenichnesu. We started early today because I want to show you some Rambams also really fascinating halachas that the Rambam gleans from this. But let's get a little bit weiter in the Gemara first. So the Mishnah says, Hagaboin shenichnesu l'sochabai. Supposed to listen to this. Now these are gaboin. And what kind of gaboin are these? We'll say in this context, the Gabai means tax collectors. So look at Rashi. This is fascinating. Yisrael shem gaboin lemelech nochri, ligbos miyad Yisrael gulgulios umasin va'arnonios. So we'll say these are Jewish tax collectors who work for a Gentile king. And they collect all kinds of taxes, right? There's a head tax, there's a general tax, there's an income tax, right? So these are the tax collectors. Now, both say, now understand, these tax collectors, by the right of the king, had the right to enter people's homes to seize tax collateral, right? So remember again, I both say, this would not fly with a Jewish king, because remember again, in halacha, it's an explicit pasuk in the Torah. Bachutz tamod. If somebody owes you money and you want to take collateral, you have every right as them to take collateral. You have no right to enter into someone's home without their permission to take collateral. Pasuk says bachutz tamod. You have to wait outside and wait for the lender to bring you something. It's a very important halacha. So that's why Rashi points out over here, the Gaboim here must be working for a non-Jewish king, right? Because as a non-Jewish king would give them permission, I guess eminent domain, would give them permission to go and enter into the home. So listen to this. See, here's the problem. If ultimately, again, Gaboim came into the home, then I will say, now what's the issue? What's the issue? The issue is, the assumption is that tax collectors were Amei Haaretz. Or Amei Haaretz. They both say this is not a knock on the tax collectors, but it's just, it's fascinating by the way. Say, we often have like this conception that, it's human nature to kind of glorify the past. And we often have this idea that in the past, right, everybody was sitting and learning, they were Talmidei Chachamim, they were so wise. Both say, isn't it incredible? The majority of people have, and probably always will be, Amei Haaretz. Right? I just want to point out what we get to do, like every single morning, learning these Gemaras, learning these Sugyas, learning Mesachas Chagigah, Sugyas and TORAH and TORAH. Let's say this is like a Chiddush. This is like a Chiddush. What we're doing today has been like the purview of the intellectual elite throughout the generations. You see, most people were just simply unknowledgeable in these areas. We have a great suchos, a great opportunity to be able to learn these sugyas that really were, Mesechas Chagigah, I will say, was one of these Gemaras that until the Lublina Rav came along and introduced Daf Yomi, sat on the shelf. And we have this chus to crack it open and to delve into these sugyas. So the tax collector was ignorant. See, here's the problem. He's right. The tax collector's coming into my house, and what is he looking for? Not Mesechus Chagigah, right? What is he looking for? He's looking for an item of value, which I will say, right? He's looking for collateral. And what's the concern? He's touching my stuff, right? The concern is he's touching my stuff. So now someone's been in my house touching my stuff. And this person is an Am Haaretz, therefore not careful with the laws of ritual purity and impurity. Similarly, V'china Ganovim. Listen to this. Thief, someone came into my home, took stuff. Now this is incredible. Shechziru es hakelim. The Ganav is returning the item that he stole. We'll talk about this, right? The Ganav is returning the item that he stole. Now here's the issue. Thank you, Ganav, for returning the item you stole. What's the problem? The problem I have is, what's the halacha regarding TORAH and TORAH? Right? What is the status regarding TORAH and TORAH? So listen to this. So ne'emanin lomar lo naganu. So what shall I listen to this? I asked the tax collector. No, tell me, Ruben, tax collector, what did you touch? Right? Nothing. Ganiv, he came into my house. Right? You returned the item. Thank you very much. What else did you touch? They are believed to say we didn't touch anything. They believe to say, right? Ne'eman lomar lo naganu. Both say, look at Rashi. Ne'eman lomar shelo nagu l'socho l'kodesh ne'eman avalo l'truma. Both say, remember again, the theme over here always is the chumrah. I should say the difference in the kodesh and truma. They are believed to say that they did not touch anything regarding kodesh, but not for truma. The kula masnisin achomer bekodesh mi b'truma kaima. Ubehedja sheni b'tosefta gaban shenichnas l'soch habayis ne'eman al taras chatos ve'in ne'eman al taras truma v'hay chatos b'rabos. Therefore, again, saloch l'maisa. So the tax collector and the thief, if I ask them, did you touch anything? They are believed to say no. They are believed to say no. B'Yushalayim, so we'll say, but again, Rashi points out they're believed legabe kodesh, but not for truma. B'Yerushalayim ne'emanon ala kodesh u'b'shas haregel af ala truma. In Yerushalayim, they're believed ultimately again for kodesh, and during the times of the regalim, they are believed even regarding truma. Both said we're going to discuss this idea that in Yerushalayim during the regalim, there is even a greater level of blanket credibility, which we'll discuss. Good. So let's analyze this. Or minhi, really fascinating Mishnah. Or minhi, haga ba'in shenichnesu l'soch habayis kulo tameh. Suppose to listen to this. The Gabon, the tax collectors who walk into the home, the entire home is tameh. So understand, what this price is highlighting is what? Which makes a lot of sense. When the tax collector comes into your house, what do you have to assume he touched? Everything. So therefore, again, look at Rashi. Because both say the assumption is that when the Gabbai is coming, and he's coming in to take stuff, and therefore he's touching everything. And therefore, again, you have to treat it like Tameh. So yet our Mishnah doesn't say that. Lokashya, Rabbi say, what does it depend on? Is there a Gentile accompanying the Jewish tax collector or not? Disnan. Listen to this. Im yesh nachri imahen, if the Jew is accompanied by a non-Jew, ne'emanin lomar lo nichnasnu. Then I will say, ultimately, again, here's what's interesting. If, let's say, the Jewish tax collector is accompanied by a non-Jew, we're going to see what the role of the non-Jew is in just a moment. Right? So ultimately, again, the Jewish tax collector is believed to say, we never entered your home. However, aval in ne'eman lomar lo nichnasnu. I'm sorry, aval in ne'eman lomar nichnasnu, aval lo naganu. See how here's what's fascinating. If the Jew is accompanied by a non-Jew, so the Jew is believed to say, we never entered. But once we know they entered, he's not believed to say, we didn't touch anything. So the Gemara will say, so therefore again, apparently once the, so we'll say, so just before we delve into this, so the Mishnah must be talking about a case where the Jewish tax collector is acting on his own. So when the Jew is by himself, that's when he has credibility to say, I didn't touch anything. But if the Jew is accompanied by a non-Jew, then halacha l'maisa, there is no credibility for him to say, I didn't touch anything. We assume if he entered, he touched everything. So the Gemara says, "V'chi ika nachri ba'adayu ma'havi." I don't understand. What does it matter when there's a non-Jew together with the Jew? What's the impact of that? Listen to this. So the Gemara says, "Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar, Chad Amar Emas Nochri Alehen." So both say it's a machlokes. One says because there is the fear of the Nochri upon him. In other words, both say that apparently again the Nochri is like the senior tax collector. And ultimately, again, the Jew is kind of working for him. So in that case, because there is a fear of the Nachri upon the Jew, that's when we assume that the Jew touched everything. V'chad amar emos malchus aleim. The other opinion says, no, it's not a fear of the Nachri, but ultimately, again, it's a fear of the monarchy. That maybe the Nachri is going to tell on the Jew to the monarch that ultimately the Jew's not being diligent or vigilant enough in his job. My ben Arba say, what's the nafkamina between the two? So what's the nafkamina would be a situation where the Nachri himself is not an important individual. If it's about the fear that the Jew has for a Nachri, he only has a fear of the Nachri if the Nachri is chashiv. But if it's about the Nachri telling on him to the king, then ultimately that could apply even to a Nachri who is not chashiv. But for our purposes, we make a distinction as to whether or not the Jew is working alone or the Jew is working with a Nachri. When the Jew is working with a Nachri, we assume that if the Jew entered, he touched everything. But when the Jew is working by himself, that's when there is the possibility to say that's what? I entered, but I didn't touch anything. Incredible. The China Ganarbo said this is a great case. Great case. So can you imagine this? So right, Reuven breaks into my house and he steals stuff. And now he comes back, he comes back and he's returning the item that he stole. So I say to him, Ruvain, no, what else did you touch? What else did you touch? And he says, nothing. Nothing, right there. I had my mind on your, all I wanted was your Maseches Chagigah. That's all I wanted, right? I just took one thing. That was it. I touched nothing else. Ultimately, again, he's believed. So it says the Gemara, let's understand. So the Gemara says, or minu, Haganavim shenichnasu l'soch habayis, eino tamei ela makom drisas raglei Haganavim. So let's listen to this. The Brisa says as follows. If thieves break into my home, the only thing that's tamei is the area where literally I see that they walked in my house. I mean the area that they traversed. So the area that I see that they were in, that's the area that is tamei. So look at Rashi. Elamakom drisas raglei Haganavim, mikom makom drisaso miatamei v'choshkin kelim sheganvu ve'achziru. Rabbi said, now understand. By the Ganov, there's two things that's happening over here. Number one, there's what did the Ganov touch in my house? And I will say, number two, there's one thing for sure he touched, which is what? Right? The item he stole. So I will say, so I just want to point out, when the Mishnah says that the Ganov is Naaman, that means that the Ganov is Naaman not only on the rest of the stuff in my house, but he's also Naaman on the item that he stole. In other words, I was saying, that he is believed to say, I did not transmit any ritual impurity to the item that I stole. Let me give you an example of this. Let's say the Ganav stole a kli cheres. In order to throw any utensils, we'll say, now you know this. How does the kli cheres become tamei? Excellent. From the interior, right? A kli cheres, supposed to say, now listen to this. I would have thought before I saw this Mishnah that when the Ganav stole a kli cheres, I have to assume that what? He got his hands all inside of that kli cheres, right? And that again, he was metameyet, and he's putting shrutzim in there, and he's got a kazayis of a corpse, and he's doing anything and everything, right? That's what I would think that's what I have to assume. But yet, amazingly enough, what the Mishnah says is that when the Ganav brings the kli back to me, he is believed to say that I only handled the kli cheres on the exterior, never did anything in the interior, and therefore halacha l'maisa, the kli cheres is tahar. Now I will say, that's huge. That's huge. And obviously, if he's believed regarding the kli that he stole, it goes without saying that what? That he's believed regarding anything else that's in my house as well. Okay, so I'll say, see, that's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara quotes the Brisa. Now listen to this. The Brisa says, "Haganavim shenichnasu l'soch habayis." So again, the Brisa says, "Ganavim enter into the home." The only part of the home that's tamei is the area where I see the ganavim. So let's say again, I see ganavim came into my home, and I see my dining room is turned upside down. The rest of the house is totally fine and intact. Dining room is turned upside down. So I realize, where are the ganavim? Where were the ganavim? They're in the dining room. So I will say, see, for the Brisa it says, any stuff in the dining room is presumed to be tamei. So that sounds like anything that a ganav handles, right, is tamei. So certainly, again, the utensil that he steals, it's very nice that he returns it, should be tamei as well. Contradicts our Mishnah. Wow. Who are we talking about, Rabbi? So we're talking about ganavim who did tshuva. Well, say, look at Rashi. And what does it mean if they did tshuva? Listen to this, kisha asu tshuva, umachmas tshuva hechzirum. We'll say, why is the ganav bringing back the utensil? So I'll say, so you could say, you could be cynical. The ganav is bringing back the utensil because, you know what, I thought this was worth more, right? Sorry, I'll be back tomorrow night, right? He's giving me, you could be, or, I'll say, no, he's about tshuva. I would say even a ganav can become a bal tshuva. He's doing tshuva. So Rashi says over here, because he's doing tshuva, hilchach lo meshakri. I will say, isn't this absolutely incredible? I will say, do you know what tshuva does? Tshuva restores your entire personalistic credibility. Yesterday I was a ganav. And today I'm contrite. I'm bringing back the utensil. I'm returning the stolen item back to the owner. And ultimately, again, I tell him, here's the utensil. And by the way, I never put my hand inside of it. The kli cheres is totally tar. Rabbi say, now I'd be tempted to say, yes, shkoyach, thank you. You're a ganov. You have no credibility. Kamash malan, Rabbi say that when a person does tshuva affects a comprehensive, cathartic change. Eino osa ish, like the Rambam says, I'm not the same person. I'm someone different. When I do tshuva, it is a complete personalistic overhaul. My credibility is restored. And now that I'm doing tshuva, I'm returning the item. I am also believed to say I did not transmit any ritual impurity to the item. I just want to point out, we learn about tshuva, we hear about tshuva all of the time, and sometimes there's a little voice inside of our head that says, come on, that doesn't really work. You can't really change. You can't really become someone different. You can't really restore your personalistic credibility. And I will say, here you see that it is 1,000% unequivocally true, and it is true not just in a hashkafic sense, it's true in a halachic sense as well. That I will say, I stole the item, I'm the ganov. And now again, when I return the item as a form of my tshuva, I am believed, I have credibility, I'm believed to say, lo nagati, I did not touch this utensil in a way which would have transmitted to Rabosai. Incredible. Tshuva really works. It really works. It really changes who I am. It really restores my personalistic identity. My credibility is given back to me. Absolutely incredible. Dekanami diktani shechzira sakin shnayin. Rabosai, what are we talking about? We're talking about a ganav who's returning the kli. Why is the ganav returning the kli? Ultimately, because he did tshuva. So therefore, I will say there are two different cases. In a situation, ultimately, again, where the ganav rampaged through my home, and I see stuff overturned everywhere, yeah, you have to be choshesh that the ganav came in contact with these items, and therefore they're in a state of ritual impurity. Ultimately, what's our Mishnah? Our Mishnah is talking about a case of a ganav who's about tshuva. And once you become Baal Tshuva, your credibility is restored. And once that credibility is restored, you are believed to say you did not touch the kli in a way which would have communicated Tumah. Incredible. In Yerushalayim, ultimately again, they are believed regarding Kodesh. So the Gemara says, Tana, v'ne'emanin al kli cheres gasin l'Kodesh. So I'll say, so remember again, in Yerushalayim, and Ha'aretz is believed even regarding large earthenware utensils for Kodesh purpose. So also remember again, in the previous Mishnah, we were speaking about the ability to go ahead and purchase klei cheres. But what type of klei cheres? Small utensils. In Yerushalayim, ultimately in Ha'aretz is believed even regarding large earthenware utensils for Kodesh purposes. The Kol Kach Lama. Rabbi say, why do we go so far to believe in Ha'aretz regarding large earthenware utensils? Shein Osin Kivshonos B'Yerushalayim. Because what we said before, we do not make earthenware kilns in Yerushalayim. Why? Like we said before, because Halacha L'Maisa. Rabbi say, like Rashi, Shein Osin Kivshonos B'Yerushalayim, Lo L'Dakim V'Lo L'Gasim. So say, ultimately, again, the reason for that is because Halacha L'Maisa, we don't want to blacken the walls of Yerushalayim. Incredible. So if Rabbi say, Halacha L'Maisa, here's what's interesting. So when it comes to, Rashi points this out, when it comes to small earthenware utensils that everyone needs, so there Chazal relaxed the standards up until where? Modi'im. You could purchase earthenware utensils from an Ha'aretz anywhere from Modi'im and in. Large earthenware utensils, you can only purchase from merchants where? Inside of Yerushalayim itself. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Ubishas haragal afala truma. And Rabbi said at the time of the Yom Tov, we're going to see this Gemara. We're going to see this halacha more explicitly. In the time of the Yom Tovim, they're believed even regarding truma. So Minhanim, Rabbi said, from where do I know this from? So Rabbi said, remember again, we're going to speak about the fact that during the regalim, during Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, the Amei Haaretz have an expanded level of credibility that even extends to Truma. Where do I know this concept from? Minhani Mili, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Damar Kra, Vayasef Kol Ish Yisrael El Ha'ir, Ki Ish Echad Chaverim. It was actually a very beautiful pasuk. Every person was gathered onto the city, Ki Ish Echad, like one people, Chaverim. Asan Kulan Chaverim. Ultimately, and I will say, so ultimately again, the pasuk makes them like Chaverim anytime they gather together. And when does everyone gather together? During the regalim. So you see, it's a beautiful drush on the pasuk that during the Zman HaSiv, when everyone's gathered together, everyone is treated like a chaver. We'll expound on that in a little bit. So we'll say, let's go to the Mishnah. We'll say these are great cases. Haposeach es chaviso. We'll say, listen to this case. V'amaschil b'sasa gaf haregel. So a little bit of background. Look at Rashi. Haposeach es chaviso. We'll say first wide line. Chaver shepasak es chaviso limkar yaim b'Yerushalayim. So we'll say, here's the case. You have a chaver b'regel. So we'll say, here's the case. A chaver. Right, so I'm a person. Let's say I'm a person who is careful with the laws of Tum and Tara. Okay, I open up my barrel on the regalim to go ahead and sell the contents of the barrel. So I'll say, so now, what happens over the course of Yom Tiv? What happens over the course of Yom Tiv? Everybody's coming around and buying wares. So I will say, when people buy, let's say, wine from me or different things from me, what happens? There are Amei Aretz and everybody's touching stuff. So I opened the barrel on Yom Tiv in order to be able to sell my wares. Look at Rashi. So we'll say, here's the issue. We just said before that during the regal, everyone is treated like a chaver, right? So essentially, we'll say what that means is, and this is really fascinating, during the Yamim Tovim, during the regalim in Yerushalayim, essentially, everyone is treated like a chaver, and therefore there's no problem of tumas am haaretz. Okay, great. So now I'm a chaver. I opened up a barrel of wine. I'm selling my wine. Everybody's coming and buying from me. Fantastic. Everybody's also touching everything. Okay, so now watch this. Back to Mishnah. So now here's the issue. Now I have leftover wine, or for that matter, leftover bread, after the regel. Now Yom Tiv is over. So I'll say, what do I know? What do I know happened over the course of Yom Tiv? What do I know happened over the course of Yom Tiv? Everyone touched, including who? Amei Aretz. So during Yom Tiv itself, everyone's treated like a chaver. The shaila is, what could I do with my leftovers? What could I do with my leftovers? Rabbi Yehuda says, finish it up. Right? You could sell it off, not a problem. The Chum say no, lo yigmar. You cannot go ahead and finish it up. Rashi says over here, Rabbi Yehuda Omer yigmar, both say very simple. Rabbi Yehuda says you have to let the chaver merchant finish it up. Why? Because if you don't let it finish it up, then what? Then the truth is he's going to be reticent to open up additional barrels of wine or start selling off new loaves of bread, because if he knows that he's going to be stuck with the leftovers, he's going to be reticent to sell additional items. And I will say, remember again, that stymies the marketplace. Says the Gemara, and Chum say lo yigmar. Chum yaseh Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, Akilad Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. So listen to this, Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, we're sitting on the porch of Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. But I say, I always love Gemaras like this, because they paint such a beautiful, relaxing picture. They're sitting on the porch, right? Right? And they're telling you, I'll say, but what does it mean for a yid to relax? You sit on the porch, you have a little l'chaim, and you talk Torah. Right? I'll say that's how a Jew relaxes. On the porch, I'm kind of infusing the l'chaim into the narrative, but it feels like it should be there, right? It feels like it should be there. So Pasach Chad v'Amar Ma'ushe Nichena l'Regel. So I'll say, so ultimately again, so they began to go ahead and discuss Ma'ushe Nichena b'Regel. Ultimately again, what's the halacha? Rashi says Ma'ushe Nichena liba d'Rabbanan. So I'll say, here's the interesting shaila. So let's say the chaver has leftovers. Can he take the leftovers, package it up, and what? Save it for the next Yom Tiv. See, this is according to the Rabbanan, because according to Rabbi Yehuda says whatever is left over after Yom Tiv, you could sell off, right? And you could assume that it's still tar. According to the Rabbanan, who say that halacha l'maisa, the dispensation only applies to Yom Tiv, but after Yom Tiv, right, you have to treat the wine or the bread like it has tumas am haaretz. Can you just simply leave it for the next Yom Tiv or not? So the Gemara says, I'm sorry. Amarle, idach yad hakom mashashin ba v'at amrit yanichena l'regel acher. How can you say that you should leave it? We know that every single Am Haaretz and his brother touched this stuff, right? So we know Abba says, so ultimately on Yom Tiv itself, the restrictions are lifted. But Abba says, see, here's what's fascinating. See, when Chazal said that we lift Tumas Am Haaretz on Yom Tiv, see, Abba said what that means is we simply don't what? There's no enforcement. But at the end of the day, we recognize that every Amma Aretz and his brother touched this stuff, which means that as soon as Yom Tov is over, according to the Rabbanan, Tumas Amma Aretz is once again revisited upon this produce. So once you know that it's there, how can you leave it for the next Yom Tov? But up until this point, every Amma Aretz was touching it as well. Tumas Amma Aretz Beregel. So it's different. Up until now, Tumas Amma Aretz during Yom Tov, essentially, the Torah suspended it. But now, Lemaisa, after Yom Tov, it's Tameh again. To which the Gemara says, Nimekit Tanoim. Rabbi say, ultimately, there should be a machlokes Tanoim. The Tani Chada Yanichena l'regel acher, the Tanya Idach lo Yanichena l'regel acher. One opinion says you can leave the leftovers for the next Yom Tov, and the second opinion says you can't leave the leftovers for the next Yom Tov. My love Tanoihi isn't a machlokes Tanoim. Lo Hadik Tani Yanichena Rabbi Yehudahi. No, the opinion that says that you could leave it till the next Yom Tov, that's Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah. Vadik Tani lo Yanichena Rabbanon. And the one who said that you can't leave it over, that's the Rabbanon. That doesn't make sense. But Tizbara, how Rabbi Yehuda will say, why, according to Rabbi Yehuda, do you have to leave it over for the next Yom Tiv? According to Rabbi Yehuda, what can you do? What can you do? Finish up. Also, remember again, Rabbi Yehuda says that Allah Lamaisa, we let you sell off the remainder of whatever you have from Yom Tiv, and we let you sell it off in a state of Tara, because if we don't let you do that, you're not going to open up, you're not going to be willing to sell the wares freely. So the Gemara says, so Rabbi Yehuda would not require you to go and leave it to the next Yom Tiv. So the Gemara says, Ela hadik tani lo yanichen Rabbi Yehuda. This is fascinating. Perhaps when the Brisa said, don't leave it over, that's Rabbi Yehuda. What does he mean when it says, don't leave it over? That means what? You don't have to leave it over because you could sell it off after Yom Tiv. Vahadik tani yanichena, and the opinion that says that you could leave it till the next Yom Tiv, ultimately again, Rabbanon. Umay lo yanichena. What does Rabbi Yehuda mean when he says you don't have to leave it over? Ultimately, again, she'ein tzarech lahanicha. It means there is no need to leave it over to the next Yom Tov. So Rabbi will say, what comes out of here is really something fascinating. What comes out of here is halacha l'maisa. We're going to see the Rambam tomorrow, Mir Sasha. And Rabbi will say, don't get nervous. I know we're only up to Amud Aleph, but again, remember, tomorrow's the last daf of Chagigah, and it's a short, the last daf of Chav Zayin is actually a short daf. But it gives us the opportunity to really relish these sugyas a little bit, because they're really quite fascinating. So here, we have another really fascinating machlokes. So we'll say, here's the important piece of information to remember. What is the status of Tumas Am Ha'aretz during the Regel? What's the status? Suspended. There is no Tumas Am Ha'aretz during the Regel, which is fascinating. Now, we'll say, now what that means is, I'm a chaver. It's amazing, right? We'll say, 5 minutes ago I was a ganav. Right? 5 minutes ago I was a ganav. But you see, I did shuvah, I returned the stolen item, and now I'm a chaver. Right? Incredible what you could accomplish in a couple of minutes. I'm a chaver. I'm selling my wine now during the regal. Right? So I've got a barrel open. Every Amma Aretz and his brother is coming sampling my wine. So during the Yom Tiv, not a problem. Why? Not a problem. No Tumas Amma Aretz during Yom Tiv. Now I will say what happens. I have a half a barrel left over after Yom Tiv. What can I do with my leftover wine? So Rabbi Yehuda says, sell it off. Essentially, once you opened it, beheter, we let you finish it off, beheter as well. The Rabbanan say no. The lifting of Tumas Amma Aretz is only when? On Yom Tov itself. But once Yom Tov is over, say, what's the status of that wine according to the Rabbanan? What's the status of the wine? What's the status? Tameh. Then I will say, it sounds like according to the Rabbanan, what can I do? I could put it away until when? Next Yom Tiv, and go ahead and sell it off then. We'll see what the Rambam does there. We'll say just one more Mishnah quickly. Mishavra haregel ma'avirna taras azara. We'll say this is incredible. When Yom Tiv was over, they would purify everything in the Beis Hamikdash. We'll discuss exactly what this means in tomorrow's Mishnah. And we'll say, but it sounds like Amei Haaretz were everywhere, and those Amei Haaretz, they've got their hands on everything. I said, so including everything in the Beis Hamikdash. We'll say it's throngs and throngs of people. So they would be metaher everything in the Beis Hamikdash, or in the Azar, means in the courtyard. We'll discuss the parameters of that. Avra haregel. The Yom Shishi. So the Gemara says, they covered Shabbos. However, if Yom Tiv ended, let's say Thursday night, so Friday was Isru Chag, there wasn't enough time to purify everything in the Beis Hamikdash because they were busy with Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda said, even if Yom Tov ended on a Wednesday night, right? So Thursday, even then there wasn't enough time to purify everything in the Beis Hamikdash because the Kohanim were busy with Shabbos. Tana, Shem Kohanim Pneuim Elahotzi B'dashin. Because we'll say, what were the Kohanim so busy with on Isru Chag? We'll say, listen to this. This is fascinating. On Matzei Yom Tov, through Isru Chag, you know what they were busy with? Trumas Hadashan. And I both say, Trumas Hadashan is the first avoda every single day, which is what? Taking out of the ash. Right? Essentially taking out the trash, taking out of the ash. That was a... And I both say, on Isru Chag, they were ridiculously busy with that. Why? Because there was such a high volume of karbanos that were brought over the course of Yom Tov. There was so much ash to be taken out that Allah Chalamayim, that's what they were busy with. And therefore, again, if Yom Tov ends either on a Thursday or a Friday, there just simply wasn't enough time to take out the ash and to purify the utensils before Shabbos, in which case they would wait for the purification of the utensils until Sunday. They will say what they purified and how they purified it. And Mirat Hashem, tomorrow, the last daf of Maseches Chagigah. Good, everyone.